chapter 2 of Gospel of John, beginning at verse 2. On the third day, there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. When the wine gave out, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." And Jesus said to her, "Woman, what concern is that to you and me? My hour has not yet come." The mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Now standing there were 6 stone jars for the Jewish rites of purification, each holding 20 or 30 gallons. Jesus said to them, "Fill the jars with water," and they filled them to the brim. He said to them, "Now draw some out and take it to the chief steward." So they took it. When the steward tasted the water that had become wine and did not know where it came from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew, the steward called to the bridegroom and said to him, "Everyone serves the good wine first, and then the inferior wine after the guests have become drunk. But you have kept the good wine until now." Jesus did this, the first of his signs, in Cana of Galilee, and revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. May God add a blessing on the reading of his word today. When you read Matthew, Mark, and Luke, very early on in Jesus' time in ministry, you see that he calls the 12 and immediately goes to the River Jordan to be baptized by John. The Gospel of John leaves that out. For in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, the first sign and wonder that happens with Jesus is at his moment of baptism when the dove ascends and the voice of God says, "This is my Son, the beloved. Believe in him, listen to him, follow him." Here, it happens with water, but there's no dove. There's no voice of God. There is a mother who is pushing his son to do what he needs to do, and there is a child who is saying, "I want to do it when I'm ready." And only a very few people really get what has happened. It was customary when a Jewish wedding would happen in first century Palestine that if the village was small enough, it would literally shut the village down. And in shutting the village down, everyone would be able to stop working in preparation for the wedding celebration. In preparation of the wedding celebration, the dowering has been paid. They set up a wedding tent in the middle of the village. There were 2 of them, actually. One that had more of a canopy underneath where the wedding ceremony took place. And then what we would call, the bridal suite, the honeymoon suite, which was usually right off, usually there in the center of town. In one end of the town, it was reserved for the wife's or the bride's campment, their family and guests. The other side would be the groom's. And the groom, when he was ready to marry his bride, would walk from his tent through the town to outside of his bride's tent to get her, obtain her, and walk her back to the wedding tent, and all the guests would be following. No morsel of food, no drop of wine would be served until the ceremony had completed. So Jesus and his disciples are there. Mary, his mother, is there. So the scholars believe that these are people that they knew. The procession has happened. The wedding has taken place, and now it's time to feast. Feast is a really nice upper crust way of saying to party hard. And for a group that really tried to live within rules of purity and cleanliness in worship to God, when it came to an old-fashioned ancient Jewish wedding, the reception was a drunk fest. I mean, if you were sober when you walked home, you didn't do it right as a guest. Now, there's a dynamic in here that I'm going to... How many little ones do we have? Yeah, you might as well hear the confession now. There is a dynamic in here that I understand. When I didn't party very hard in college. One time I should have died, and that was pure stupidity on my part. Mostly I was a designated driver, and I put the guys from my floor in the back of my pickup truck, find the bumpiest ride that I could to empty them before we got back onto campus, because I lived on a dry campus. Being intoxicated was a no-no, even though half the students usually were. But on occasion, I would go and I would not be the designated driver. And I would do what the steward is saying you're supposed to do. I drank the good stuff till I got a buzz, and then I drank the cheap stuff, because I wasn't going to taste it anyway. I saved a lot of money that way. My friends drank the good stuff all the way through, and I used to sit there and go, dumb, dumb, dumb. They never understood why I had money and they didn't. They usually deposited theirs in ways that I didn't think was necessary. The reason why the steward goes to the bridegroom on this, pointing out this social protocol, which was a necessity, was that it was the bridegroom's family responsibility to provide the spirits, to provide the main elements of the meal. Oh, family members and friends would bring things like a dish to pass, but for the party really to get moving, it was the responsibility of the groom and his family to pay for. Sometimes betrothals happened at very young and early ages. I'm talking about 5 and 6. And between that time until they were of marrying age, which is 13 to 14, 15 would be old. The family was saving to be able to pay for this party, making deals, bartering out work agreements. And the steward comes to him and is basically saying, you have done this backwards, you fool. This is the stuff you should have served first. There's also the part of him is going, I'm so glad you weren't cheap, because we didn't run out of stuff for the party to go on. What is not recognized by the crowds is the one who would make impossible things possible, who could turn tragedy into victory, brokenness into wholeness, failure into success, is Jesus of Nazareth, right there. If these are people who have known Jesus from the moment that he was born and came into this world and was raised in the region, they don't know him as the Messiah, the Anointed One, the one they've been waiting for. They know him as the son of the carpenter, Jesus ben Joseph, and as Mary's boy. They would have also known that Mary had Jesus before the wedding ceremony officially took place, and that Joseph, who was a very righteous and upstanding and deeply respected man of faith in the region, lost that honor the moment he stayed married to Mary's mother. They saw Jesus for what they thought he was. It took them a long time to understand who he truly was. All they saw was the image that was before him and the preconceived notions that had been programmed into their minds, but they did not recognize that it was the Son of God, the true bridegroom that comes and marries himself to the people of the world to uplift us out of our sin, out of our dross, out of our darkness, out of our brokenness, out of whatever tragedy we may face, and put us in a relationship where we will never hunger, never thirst, never have to be alone if we remain open to that which our loving God does through his Son, through his Spirit. The disciples were there. They were following. And now through this miracle, they began to believe that maybe this guy could be who we're waiting for. The servants who were overseeing the party going on, they were the runners. They're the ones saying, do you need more water in your water glass? Oh, you need butter? Let me get you butter. You don't like that flavor of pepper? Let me go get you another one. We got a great lemon tarragon in the back. That's who the servants were. They're the ones that filled the water. They're the ones saying, I wonder what hole he's going to pull this out of. And they're the ones who took the instruction of taking the sample to the steward. They're the ones that asked questions. Who is this? How is this possible? Only God can turn water into wine. Because as we say in our culture, water gives life. In Palestine in the first century, and still parts of the world today, water does not give life because it is so filthy and diseased and has so many parasites. You consume it, it can actually take life from you. So the wine purifies it, makes it so your body is hydrated, makes it so you can make it another day. Only God can make the water worth drinking. And hear this, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of the carpenter, Mary's child, the one that was born out of wedlock, the one that we should reject and not look at seriously. Look at what he did. And the jars that were used for ritual cleansing of our bodies. And, you know, we have that thing, wash your hands, wash up before you eat. The Jews took that very, very seriously, because if you were filthy when you came to partake in the food, which was God's providence, you were defiling your relationship with God. So they would have special jars, jars of stone, because stone jars did not contaminate the water the way metal jars could. They were iron. The water would collect iron deposits because the vessel would rust. If they were in silver or gold or copper too long, it would taint the flavor, but not in stone, not in clay. John's imagery is beautifully powerful in that what he used to make this good and perfect wine that saved the steward, saved the bride, allowed the people to still celebrate in the glory and celebration of these two people being brought together by God, happened in something that was to purify you and make you presentable to God, to receive that gift. And the only ones who knew were the servants, the disciples, and Mary. Everyone else just went about enjoying themselves, having a time of revelry and celebration. Because their eyes weren't fixed on what God could do. They were fixed on the party, but not on the work that went into it. They were fixed on the celebration that was at hand, but not everything that went into making it possible. They weren't fixed on the guests, they were fixed on what they could get out of it. And you could sit there and simply say Jesus came in and saved the day. But what he did is he opened the eyes of a few people, showing us that if we stop, if we really look, if we stop focusing on the image that we have of what spirituality, the church, what God should be, and just let God do what God does, which is to reveal his power and glory as he is involved with our lives each and every day, then we wouldn't be able to miss a thing. We wouldn't be so afraid in facing tomorrow. We wouldn't be so worried about getting through the rest of today. All of these prayer requests that we had, how many of them were concerns of need? And yes, we live in a world of need. But if we have our eyes truly fixed to see the greater things that God does, in simplicity and grandiosity, I don't think that's a word, but I'm making it up right now. Instead of being afraid of the future, we could be confident that our God is going to take us through. Because we're able to see the greater things. We're able to see more than what's just in front of us. Rather recently, I don't know where I was, but I was talking about a town that I had worked in a number of years ago, and we were talking about a coffee house in this town. And my comment was, yeah, that's where I taught my son to play chess. I started to teach him when he was 3.5. He's 15 now. We don't play very often. He beats me rather quickly. He's very good. But the biggest thing in understanding the game of chess versus checkers is, in checkers you have to think a move or two ahead. You don't have to focus very hard. Chess, you need to be thinking a minimum of 5 to 6 moves ahead. You need to be seeing what is called the entire board. Not just where you want to make your next move, where you need to make your next 5. How you can manipulate your opponent to a position of weakness so you can strike and so you can win. It's a game of incredible patience, a phenomenal game of strategy. And there are days when he beats me at that game that I am sorry that I taught him. But when he beats someone else, I'm very proud. So, go figure it out. The hardest thing for me to get my son to understand at 3.5 was you need to look at all the squares, all the pieces, where they are, what they can do, how they need to be moved in order for victory to take place. If we put that into terms of faith, sometimes when we're going through the journeys, we're just focused on the end task, the end goal, to get it done and to move on. That is a tunnel vision that allows us to see so little when God is working so greatly outside of that. It's like the difference between taking a single shot picture with your 35 millimeter versus one that can do a panoramic. We need to be able to see God moving in everything. And that comes in looking outside of ourselves. Stopping and communing with our Lord. Not only here on Sundays, but in other times and other places. Because there are moments in that greater world and seeing that greater things that we as believers and followers get called to action and to do something, and our response is, I'm not ready yet. Weigh an opinion on something. I'm not ready yet. Make a decision to move forward. I'm not ready yet. And for those that see the decision that need to be made immediately, when the decision finally gets made, and I know I'm speaking in a hypothetical here, you've got some folks that are relieved that the decision was finally done, and you got those who are, why couldn't you have done that 6 months ago? There's no way to make it perfect. But for us who are in the journey each and every day, it's about leaving ourselves open for God to blow our minds just a little bit bigger than they are right now. To confront us in some of the positions of pride and prejudice that we have, things that we have used to define who and what we are, God is standing there going, I'd like to show you something else and allow that to happen. I don't know why Mary pushed Jesus into performing this miracle, other than seeing a need that was done and her having the faith that her son, the Son of the living God, could take this tragedy, and it would have been tragic when everyone found out that the wine ran out, and allow the celebration to go on a little longer. If we allowed ourselves to be opened, to take what we think is ordinary and a one-time use and give it to God to just kind of reformulate, recast, reshape, so it can be recycled and reused, how beautifully and diverse do you think the kingdom would be? And I'm not talking about throughout the entire world. I'm talking about right here where we are. It starts by seeing the greater things. It starts by taking that little tunnel, that tiny aperture, and allowing the fins of the lens to just open up and become broader and broader and broader. Yes, the more things we see can be overwhelming. It can be scary. But even if we give that opening and that scariness to our God, God will show us how to use, how to be involved, how to work within what we see. The beauty, the wonder, the miracle, and the needs. If we just took time to see greater things, imagine the greater things that could happen. Water got turned into wine. A bridegroom was saved. The celebration could metaphorically go on without ever having to end. All because Jesus said, hey, take that thing that's used for one thing and let's use it for something else. It sounds small, but it's the beginning of seeing something greater. Would you all pray with me, please? Amazing God. There are times you just leave us in awe and literally without words. The feelings that rush through us are hard to identify because it is this deluge of so many complex things. But what is driving all of it is your love. Your love and your calling for us to be part of you. Help us to open our eyes so we can see the blessings that you pour into our lives each and every day, and so we can help others to see the blessings that you are pouring into their lives each and every day. We ask this in your Son's name as we strive to see greater things. For it is in his name that we gather, in his name that we meditate, his name that we celebrate, in his name that we pray.